what's up, everyone? Welcome to week 6 and episode number 6 of the Fantasy Cheat Sheet podcast. If you've caught the show before, welcome back. But if you are new to the show, this is the show that counts down the 10 things that you need to know heading into the games this Sunday. And as a reminder, we are a member of the Going for Two Live podcast network. You can find us when you go to Twitter and go to Going for Two Live there, or jump on over to YouTube, Going for Two Live, and subscribe so you don't miss us or any of the other great programming at Going for Two Live. I am your host, Jay Christensen. You can find me on Twitter at JC_DFF, and I am joined by my two co-hosts. First, you can find him at Drop the Mic FF. We've got Mike Hicks. How are you doing, Mike?
Hey, I'm here. I'm glad I can talk football instead of talking work and forest fires. Let's get this party started.
That's right. You made it. You made it here tonight. Unlike some players for week 6 this week, you are, questionable, but you made it. You're going to play through the pain. And we also got Evan Ritter overcoming injuries and, technical difficulties, whatever's going on, maybe a shin injury or calf or something. But you can find him at EV_RITT3 on Twitter. Evan Ritter, what is going on tonight?
How's it going, guys? As always, just glad to be here. With you two fine gentlemen, ready to go ahead and talk some football, NFL Week 6. Let's go ahead and get into it.
Yeah, and if you are joining us on the live stream, feel free to hit us up with some questions in the chat. We try to get to as many questions as we can. We obviously have our 10 things that we try to count down for you, but we try to mix in those questions. If you got start-sit questions, trade questions, anything you want to throw in there, feel free to throw them in, and we will get to as many as we can. First thing first, though. Football started. Week 6 kicked off last night. We had the defending champion, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, facing off against the Philadelphia Eagles. This probably was the worst Thursday night football game, I think, of the year so far. I didn't really enjoy it. The Eagles had a offensive performance for the ages, I would say. Not great. They lose to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a respectable 28-22, but it was not as close as the score ended up being. Jalen Hurts salvaged a fantasy day in the end, getting a couple touchdowns rushing. But man, that Eagles offense struggled that entire game. Tampa Bay was pretty much in cruise control for the entire time. Guys, let's break this one down a little bit. As always, we try to give a couple takeaways from the game here, and give me a takeaway, what you saw in that game. Obviously, it's not the greatest game in the world, but there were some interesting nuggets I think you could take away. We'll start with you, Evan. Give us a little rundown on Thursday night football.
Yeah, so like you said, not the greatest game. I don't have too many takeaways. Obviously, Brady, once again, even on what many would say maybe was a down game for him, even with a hurt thumb, once again, ends up doing it. I mean, the man's he's unreal. He does it week in, week out, hurt thumb and all. But I guess one more take on the Bucs is Leonard Fournette. I mean, it seems that him getting that run last year in this system has carried over, man. He looks really good. So fantasy managers are happy to have him on their roster for the rest of the season for sure, because he's looking good in this Bucs offense. But my main takeaway would be Jalen Hurts. He showed some fight, but man, does he need to take a step forward passing, because I think he finished with I think he was 12 for 26 with 115 yards and a touchdown. He got it done on the ground once again with his feet, scoring another 2 touchdowns, and that gives him 5 on the year in 6 games, which is the first quarterback in Eagles history to do that. But yeah, I mean, I really like the kid. I don't know if he's going to be able to sustain being a starting NFL quarterback if he cannot figure out how to take a step forward passing the ball.
Yeah, to his credit, I mean, rough game last night. Only his 10th start, so I'll give him that. I do like him too. For fantasy, he's pretty great. Guy, even when he struggles, doesn't get under 20 points. It's remarkable. And in a little bit of his defense, their offensive line was garbage last night. There's receivers for garbage. I'm particularly Rager and Watkins. I don't know. Some of those balls, like, they don't go up and get them the right way. It's just weird. Smith wasn't involved that much. It was just a weird offensive game plan like the whole time. He ran the RPO really weird too. He always kept it, which was strange. But like honestly, that front on Tampa Bay played really well. I don't know what you were gonna do on that front, anyways. But man, yeah, there were some throws there. I'm sure he needs to hit those touch throws where he has to kind of lay it over linebacker or get it into tight windows. Really inconsistent there.
Real quick, he made a couple really odd decisions. Like he was rolling out and he clearly could have just tossed the ball out of bounds, went to see, I think it was like a 2nd and 10, but instead he's looking at a 2nd and 11 because he just slid down. Why slide down in bounds? Just flick the ball out of bounds and move on. I mean, it's just, it's like you said, it's only his 10th start. So, hopefully it'll come to him, but it just seems like, he's having a hard time making the full transition.
Yeah. Mike, what do you got? The thoughts on Hurts or other takeaways from last night?
I'm going to go a little different direction just because the game is over, and I think it just needs to be brought up real quick. Zach Ertz did so well last night that he got himself traded.
You mean Arizona Cardinals? Zach
Ertz. I mean, I think we need to bring that up only because when Goddard does come back from the COVID list, I think this is just going to exponentially bump up his value because he was getting, I think it said something like 55% of the targets, tight end targets, and 45 was going to, Ertz. That's just going to bump up. He's going to run more routes now. He wasn't running as many routes as people thought because they still inclined to play Ertz. Now that Ertz is going to be in Arizona, but I also want to mention the fantasy owners because I saw this all over Twitter today. No, he will not be playing on Sunday. The league rules do not allow him to play two games in 1 week. So don't expect him to play Sunday because it will not happen. But I just think Goddard, this is going to be better for Goddard. And honestly, I agree with Evan. If Hurts doesn't get Goddard more involved in the game and do better at passing, this is not good for this offense.
For sure. Yeah, it was rough last night. The other interesting thing is Miles Sanders, less than 10 rushes, 3 of his last 4 games. When they got him involved late, and honestly might have been Tampa Bay softening up because they were surprised that even Philly even tried to run the ball, but he did average 6.2 yards per carry last night. And that was some of the effective, more sustained drives that Philly had towards the end of the game. I do think they have to work the running game more into their game plan to have any success. They can't just rely on Hurts passing and Hurts running. It's just too predictable. They got to mix it up there. The game plan last night was just all over the place. So I would look for Sanders to be more involved. It has not been great so far. If you have Sanders on your teams, that's been a disaster so far. The usage has not been there. Another interesting thing to bring up quick before we move on, the rise of OJ Howard. He's back, baby.
I started him in Dynasty, man.
Yeah, I think I faced him in one league. It was surprising. It was very deep in that league, and they must have been hurting. But he's actually involved. He had 7 targets, 6 catches, 49 yards, and a touchdown. Could be. I don't know. That Gronkowski, I think could be back next week. We'll see. He has so many ribs cracked though, so I mean, I'd be surprised if they put him full go. OJ Howard, interesting.
And OJ Howard was needed in the winning DFS lineup too. So,
right.
I had a little exposure to him, but not nearly enough.
Yeah, it very interesting that I'm not surprised by, because it's just when you get there, you got Cameron Brate and OJ Howard. It was interesting, but nice to see OJ Howard, who had a lot of hype early on, back involved for this game at least. So we'll see. Brady's targets tend to shift. A lot of Brown last night, a lot of Howard, a little less Godwin and Evans. That could be all Evans and Godwin next week. That's kind of how it works there. So you kind of have to start those guys, and one of them's going to hit big, or maybe 2, but. Anyways, any last thoughts quick here? Those were kind of my main things there. I think
we're ready for week 6. The rest of week 6.
Yeah, whoever's going to play this week, because this week, as we get into it, we're going to discuss it here. I think everybody's questionable, or everybody's on a bye. I don't know. Like, you're either questionable, out, or not playing this week. It seems like this is a week where you're going to have to dig a little deeper in your lineups and figure out who you're going to start in your lineups. And as I said before, if you have questions, throw them in the chat. And if your question relates to one of our topics, I might hold it off for a little while. We got a Hunt question coming up, but I got Hunt coming up, so we're going to answer that there. Yep. But feel free to throw things in there, and we will answer them as we go along. So let's kick off our top things, a list of 10 things that you need to know going into this weekend's games. We're going to kick it off with you, Evan. What's number one?
So I'm going to go back to the well with Brandon Cooks coming off 2, down weeks. One was against the best defense in the league, in my opinion, the Buffalo Bills. The other against the mediocre Patriots defense. But we know Belichick's MO is to take away, a team's best defensive weapon, which is clearly Brandon Cooks in that Texans offense. To that note, he has an insane 35.6% target share on the year. I mean, that's just absolutely insane. That's like Devonte Adams type numbers. So now Cooks gets a Colts defense that just yielded 442 passing yards to the Ravens. They allow the highest passing success rate on the season and are the 25th ranked defense against fantasy wide receivers. At the moment, the Colts are also decimated with injuries. I was looking over the injury report. Kwity Paye didn't practice today with a hamstring. Darius Leonard was a DNP due to both ankle and shoulder injuries. But the most important injuries I'm keeping an eye on for Brandon Cook's fantasy matchup is the Colts secondary, who we know came out of that Ravens game really banged up. Both Xavier Rhodes and Andrew Sendejo missed practice with concussions. And I mean, so obviously they'll both have to clear concussion protocols to be able to play. And if things couldn't even get worse for the Colts, their other cornerback, Rocky Sin, missed practice with an ankle injury. So he's not guaranteed to suit up. So I just think Cooks, going up against a banged up secondary can easily put, together a huge day. They're an exploitable secondary to begin with. So, Cooks should have no problem, going up against second and third unit potential DBs and having a huge day. Not to mention, we just saw David Mills figure some things out last week, throwing for 312 yards and 3 touchdowns against a better defense than what the Colts should be putting out there this week. I mean, the Colts are the 21st ranked defense per PFF. So, if they are banged up, that bodes even better for Brandon Cooks. So I would get him back into your lineups because he should be in for a big one this Sunday afternoon.
Right. We already slept on Cooks a little bit a few weeks ago when they played the Panthers and he crushed. And it's just like, it seems like a guy you just can't count out. It doesn't matter the matchup in some cases or the quarterback situation. Granted, the last 2 weeks haven't been the best, but he's just a tough guy to keep out of your lineups. I believe I read today the Colts had given up the most touchdowns to wide receivers too, or were tied.
Yeah.
It was 10. Mm-hmm. So a team that's very susceptible to wide receiver play. I think Cooks is, he's a stud player. He's just a guy that you got to get into your lineup, especially on bye weeks. And he probably shouldn't be a question anyways. So I like that. I wouldn't fear the Colts matchup at all. If they're banged up, I mean, it's a defense that's solid if they're healthy for the most part, but if they're banged up, yeah, definitely exploitable, especially in the air. Mike, what are your thoughts on Brandon Cooks coming into this weekend?
To me, he's a must start this week and a must start every week. I think the only reason, I know he's had a couple bad weeks, but to me, the only reason he had a bad week last week was they went against Bill Belichick, and Bill Belichick is always good at stopping the number one target, and Bill Belichick always has a target out for wide receivers that used to play for him, and even if it was a short stint, I didn't think he was going to have as bad of a game as he had, but I didn't think he was going to have a monster game. And, other guys stepped up. I mean, Moore had a good game, but here's the thing. I think that's a flash in the pan. I mean, I had to pick up Moore in a deep fantasy league just because I needed to pick somebody up because of injury, but just in case. But I think Cook is going to be back, and especially in a matchup like this, I mean, it's the only right thing to do is to play him and expect big things.
That's right. Chris Moore is one of those players that you go to the waiver wire and you look at and you're like, I've been here before, right? I've been on the waiver wire in a deep league, and Chris Moore, and you click on him, you're like, who's this guy? like he was on the Ravens before. Like, okay, like
yeah,
like,
you just got to do it.
Why are we doing this? Like, just every year. Anyways, yeah. So play Cooks. It's Brandon Cooks. He's good. Play him. That's our advice there. So let's jump to number 2. As we get in, like I said, bye weeks injuries are coming into play here. I'll rattle off some of the injuries a little bit later, but we're going to touch on some of them as we go along. This might be a guy that you might get into your lineup here. Let's throw it to you, Mike, with number 2.
All right. So like we were talking, everyone's questionable. Well, then you got guys that get put on the COVID list, and that's why they're questionable. And that's what happened in Chicago. You already have Montgomery out on IR. Now Damien Williams is on the COVID list. So Khalil Herbert. Everyone thought he could be a low-end guy coming into the week, even with Montgomery because of usage. Last week, with both of them, Herbert had 34 snaps. Williams had 31. Herbert had 18 rushing attempts. Williams had 16. The difference was that Williams had 2 catches and a touchdown, and Herbert didn't. 51% opportunity share for Williams, 48% opportunity share for Herbert. So he already had a split. A lot of people thought Williams was going to be the dominant back and take the majority of the snaps when Montgomery got hurt. That wasn't the case. It was almost a 50-50 split. Now Williams is out. All those carries are going to go to Montgomery or to Herbert. I'm expecting Herbert to have 75% of the opportunity share for running backs. The main reason, they just don't have anyone else to give it to. And like we all know, volume is king in fantasy football. I expect him to be a mid to low end 2 flex option at best, or at worst, flex option at worst. I am playing him in every lineup that I have because Green Bay is 18th against the run. And I think this game is going to, Rodgers is going to sling the ball. Fields and them are going to have to play from behind. Herbert's going to have to get involved to help out Fields. And I just see this as a game that I think he'll get in the end zone. And I can see this as a decent game for Herbert.
Yeah, Herbert's a guy that I liked out of Virginia Tech. He's a guy a versatile running back. He can kind of do most things. My question would be how involved he gets in the passing game. That's one thing he didn't do last week. He had 0 targets, 0 catches. I don't know how much they want to involve there and how much they
trust him,
value him in pass protection, stuff like that. Like, I don't know who else they have though. I think Ryan Nall's still on the depth chart. I'm just not sure who they're going to bring in to spell him on third downs. I think he gets all like the first and second down work for sure. And he's definitely going to get volume. I think you have to play him this week. To your point, it's just a guy. I think he's going to get volume. I'd be surprised if he didn't get 15 to 20 carries because he did last week pretty much. I think he had 14. So I mean, he's going to be involved. There's a decent chance he could get in the end zone, especially if they get close. And I liked him as a running back, and he's been pretty good so far in the small sample size that we've seen. So I think it's a guy you got to play. It would just be the question of if ceiling's capped a little bit with like receiving work, but I'm just not totally sure how that's going to work because I'm not even sure how their depth chart's going to look this weekend. But Evan, any thoughts on Khalil Herbert here?
Yeah, no, I mean, he's definitely a gem. If you have anybody out on bye or you're hurting at the running back position, you're able to get them on rosters because with the Damian Williams news, like you guys said, I mean, volume is king. They trusted him with 18 carries last week. I don't see any reason he shouldn't get 15 plus this week. He's easily a low end RB2 for me that I think you can definitely put in lineups. It's just the question is, like you said, he didn't catch many passes in college, so he probably won't catch many in the NFL either. But once again, to your guys' point, they really don't have anyone else. So he's going to see all the work. When they do get in the red zone, he should get the goal line looks. So definitely a gem that, found off the waiver wire. And this late into the season, when we start seeing injuries, we start seeing bye weeks. These are the guys we need to get us wins in these, in these weeks, in these middle of the season weeks that, so we can pile up some wins and get our playoff outlook looking good, So yeah, I mean, low end RB2 for me, and definitely think you can get him in lineups this week.
Yeah, just one of those guys you play Dynasty. He's like your 3rd round pick. You have him on your taxi squad. You got to promote him. You got to play him.
Love it.
Dang
it. So if you're in Dynasty, you know who he is. In redraft, you're like, oh man, he's trending. He's number 1 on Sleeper.
Yeah.
So he is. We'll see how it goes. These are always like, there's some risk involved, but he's with the landscape this weekend. He's like a must play. He's definitely in the top 24. So he's playing in your RB2 spot for sure.
For sure.
Let's get to number 3. And we're going to get to, we got a question on this guy too. I want to talk a little bit about Kareem Hunt because Nick Chubb already ruled out this weekend, which is a bummer. It's like 2 guys. I mean, they're both actually were questionable. They were injuries this week, missed practice, Hunt and Chubb. Hunt practiced today. Chubb ruled out. It's one of those things where it's like they finished the game. What's going on? Why is everybody hurt? So I don't, obviously a calf injury crept up with Chubb. It's going to keep him out this week. We'll see how long he keeps him out long term. Hopefully not a long-term injury, but now this bodes the question of, how do you value Hunt? He's already very, very valuable this year, though. He is basically RB 6 on the year overall in PPR. And while Chubb's number 12, so this is a guy who has pretty much crushed it so far this year, has been fantastic for fantasy, basically splitting time with Chubb. These are guys that basically split the time almost exactly. You got 52% snap share for Chubb. You got 44% snap share for Hunt. Hunt gets more involved in the pass game, has had a little bit more luck getting in the end zone this year so far. And obviously has more receptions and more yards from receptions. So he actually outscored Chubb so far. He's been really fantastic in that role. The interesting thing too is, like, do you just blast him to the moon when Chubb's out? The interesting thing, though, when you look back last year on the season, Hunt actually finished 10th as running back, but in the 4 weeks that Chubb was out last year, he was actually RB 11. So he actually didn't really necessarily crush with Chubb out. Now, I'm not saying you should do anything different with Hunt. This is a guy you are playing. He's an RB1 this week. But I don't know if you should go too crazy necessarily in, DFS or anything crazier than you normally do with him. This is a guy who's rock solid regardless. Chubb being out, I don't know if that necessarily blasts him into another stratosphere, if that makes sense. Because the numbers haven't borne out yet. He just, when Chubb's been out, he kind of almost gets the same type of workload. And honestly, it might fit better, the 2 of them playing on that particular team. But I think you're still going to get solid numbers. You're going to get, 15, that range of carries, maybe to 20. He's going to catch some passes. And then he obviously has a very good chance of getting in the end zone because that team does run the ball plenty. So I totally love him. It's just sort of like, he almost doesn't change for me. He's been so good. And Chubb being out, I think he's going to still be about the same amount of goodness there. So I think he's still going to be solid this weekend. And, that's a guy actually I've been trading for in leagues because I actually think he's been a value up until this point prior to the Chubb trade, because he's actually a guy people are valuing more as a 2 because it's tough to value him with Chubb there. But he's been an affordable buy in trades for, especially in my dynasty league. So I've liked to do that. And I certainly like him this weekend. So it'll be interesting to see if anything changes with Chubb out. I just don't necessarily think it will. Before I throw it to you guys to get your thoughts on Kareem Hunt this weekend, we did have a question in the chat. And this is a basic trade question involving Hunt. So I want to throw it out here now. Would you trade CMC, who another injury, gonna miss his 3rd straight week this week with that hamstring for the Panthers, for Eckler and Hunt? For me, I don't know what format this is, if they're still in the chat, or redraft or dynasty. Almost in either format. I guess dynasty might change it a little for me depending on your position and where you're at. If you're contending, if you're not, I think in redraft I might just swing for that depth and go with Eckler and Hunt. Eckler's been so good this year, so I'll take that second running back and Hunt. I'll get 2 top 12 guys for CMC, who's got a hamstring injury that could linger. That's where I'm at with that. So I think I would take that trade. Dynasty, we might have to talk about it a little bit more, but let me throw it to you, Evan, get your thoughts on that trade, and also give me your thoughts on Hunt heading into this weekend.
In, like you said, in redraft, especially if I can get that value with CMC injured, I am running to press accept all day. I would love to get that value for CMC. So yeah, if it's redraft, go ahead, hit accept, just log off right now, run and hit accept, and get Eckler and Hunt on your team. As far as Hunt's outlook this week, this is why I love the show, because I didn't really look at, Hunt as in the light that you shed, Jay. I was just like, wow, Nick Chubb's out, freaking Kareem Hunt to the moon. So I may need to kind of reel that back in and kind of, look at it from your perspective, which is once again why I love the show, because we get all of our views on things. Like you said, he is the RB6, and that's with just averaging 11 carries on, the year. Then that's 2 Chubb's 18. So with Chubb being out, that was one of the reasons I was like, oh, dude, there is plenty of work still to go Chubb's way. I mean, to Kareem Hunt's way. And he draws, a beautiful matchup against the Cardinals, who are the give up the fourth most rushing yards in the league at 139. In addition, 5.4 yards a carry, which is number 31 in the NFL. So he gets a beautiful matchup this week. But, kind of to your point, once again, it's like he's already the RB6. How much room for improvement is there? So, that whole,
he was banged up a little bit too this week. So I could see them working in Felton, some other running backs just to spell him a little bit.
One more thing to your point, with him kind of, like you said, to Chubb and him kind of working in together, does it work better for him because he gets to stay fresher, throughout the game, his legs get to stay fresh. So maybe with him taking on a whole workload, which he hasn't done in a while since with the Chiefs, how in tune and how in shape is he ready to go to take on that full workload? But either way, with Chubb in the lineup, with Chubb out of lineup, I love Hunt this year, and against the Cardinals this week, I expect him to smash.
Right, Mike, what do you think? You doing this trade, and any last thoughts on Hunt?
All right, so I'm doing this trade right away. That's all I need to say. You guys have both said everything about this trade. When it comes to Hunt, I am kind of in the middle of you two, which is kind of cool. Just like Evan said, we all have different opinions. I'm kind of right in the middle of you guys. I do think he's going to have a good game. The thing is, you mentioned it, Jay. I think because of Chubb being out, they're going to give him the majority of the workload. But to save him a little bit because he's been banged up, I think they're going to give a lot of the passing downs to Felton. I think Felton's going to have more play in this game than people realize. And that's the main reason I am not to the moon on him. So I think that's why I am. And like you said, he can't go that much further. He's already at 6. Right. And that's at 6
near the moon.
But the major thing is that's without the workload on the ground compared to some of the guys, like a Henry and a Chubb and, Najee. He's doing this a lot through the air and only on what you said, not even 55% of the snap share or the workload. So I think he's going to do around where he's been, but the major thing to me is I think Felton is going to take a little bit off of that, and this game is going to be a fun one to watch anyway.
Don't know. I do like this game. Yeah, 5 touchdowns in 5 games for Hunt. So just finding the end zone this year. And it's interesting how they use them too. It's not like when they get in close, we wouldn't give it to Hunt. They're comfortable giving it to either guy close. It's not like one guy just like, oh, he's our goal line back. It's like they'll work in Hunt. So it's not even like I love Hunt this week. I'm trading for him. It's like I think he's a good guy. It's just sort of like Chubb. It doesn't change a ton for me, I guess, with Chubb out, but he is a rock solid play that you are obviously playing. There's no doubt about that. And we like that trade, especially in redraft. Probably like it in Dynasty too. But smash accept in redraft for sure. Let's move on to our 4th topic of the week. We're going back to you, Evan. Take it away.
So this is going to be with the bye weeks upcoming. Prepare your rosters for the bye apocalypse coming up in week 7. That phrase is coined by, the goats over at the fantasy footballers. Everybody knows them. If you play fantasy football, the fantasy footballers. Bye apocalypse coming up in week 7, which will have a total of 6 teams all on bye at once. That's the most of any bye weeks, which, will start this week and then go through week 14. Week 7, we'll have 6 teams, which, like I said, is the most. There's a lot. Not only is there a lot of, games on bye, but there's a ton of fantasy studs that, most people count on, that a lot of us count on for your fantasy team success. But obviously you will have no choice to move them to your bench for a week. So in week 7, if you have any players from the following teams, you'll need to have a plan in place: the Buffalo Bills, the Dallas Cowboys, Los Angeles Chargers, Minnesota Vikings, Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Jacksonville Jaguars. So that means we'll be without fantasy superstars like Josh Allen, Dak Prescott and company, Herbert, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, who's been the number 1 wide receiver so far, Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook, Najee Harris, Pittsburgh's 2 stud receivers, and even Jacksonville's of note with, fantasy rosters will be without James Robinson. So, yeah, man, fantasy managers are going to be scrambling in week 7. And this is when those bench stashes become tremendously important. So just take a look at your roster, take a look at waivers, see what you need to do as far as an insurance plan goes, for these upcoming bye weeks, especially, like I said, if you roster a significant amount of players from teams in week 7. Because once again, the bye apocalypse is coming, and we need to repair sooner.
Board the windows up.
Prepare sooner rather than later.
Canned goods in the basement.
It's coming.
Get down there. Yeah, you might have to play Cliff Raymond or something like
Exactly.
I don't know, like this week. That's
Or
how far we might go.
Look at the last comment.
I mean, this week's bad enough. I mean, we've got someone like I can't even fill out my roster now. What do I do? And would you start Gary Brightwell? I've heard of that name before. He's on
my exact point, man. I was going through and I'm looking and I'm like, dude, what am I going to do when week 7 hits? Because, I mean, like I said, you roster so many of these players that are not only relevant, but you count on to win you a week. You know what I mean? So
what did Jeff Lambert, who going for 2, he's runs our site. What did he have? Chubb, every guy who's hurt, CEH, CDH. He had like every running back.
He had Akers, Dobbins.
Yeah, just like there are teams that looked awesome on paper that literally have every single running back on their roster hurt this week.
Jeff's gonna have to give all his players. Yeah, he's gonna have to give all his players nicknames next year. Like, just do not say their name out loud because they go down with injury.
Yeah, I don't know if you had. I don't play Gary Brightwell, but if you could pick up any wide receiver to play over him, probably. But I'll let you know. Who knows? I mean, is Devonte Booker going to take every care of their?
Oh yeah, there it is. He just posted. he just put up who he has hurt.
Oh, that's Jeff on there. So yeah, sweet.
Look at that.
Yeah, Akers, Chubb, CMC, Demont, CNC, and plus that's a great team.
Oh man,
garbage now, but
sorry, Jeff.
Man, it especially sucks for teams like me. In a couple leagues, dude. I'm already down and out, man. And I need these upcoming weeks. Like, I need a win. And then stuff like this hits you. And it's just
you're 1-4.
Yeah, it's like what?
2-3. 0-5. You're probably screwed anyways. But I mean, you're down in the depths, and then everybody gets hurt. Yeah.
Try to make a trade. Do what you can. Look at the waiver wire. Get them on your team now. Like, I've already stashed like some, quarterbacks I know have been out. I've grabbed Darnold in 1 quarterback leagues. Try to just anybody with a breath for this week 7 coming up.
Yeah, I mean,
it's going to be awful.
Like, you can get both Chiefs guys. If you didn't pick up Jerick McKinnon, there's a chance.
Yep.
You don't know how that's going to shake out on that team. Get second, even Gary Brightwell. Who knows what he does this week? Get second running backs if you can't.
Plan ahead.
Top guy, because when you get down in the depth charts of these teams, they don't just ride the second guy sometimes, especially if they're not an established guy. They might mix in the third guy on passing downs. And
we haven't come out of week 6 yet. Unfortunately, we're in for some more injuries, most likely.
Yeah, and this week, it's just besides those guys we mentioned, Barkley's out, McLaurin's out, Damian Williams, obviously on the COVID list, Sammy Watkins, Chris Carson, Mike Williams sounds pretty doubtful even with the knee. Questionable guys like Tyreek Hill, he's probably going to play, but he's questionable. I think every Lion was questionable. I think I looked at their thing today.
A lot of waiver wire players are going to become relevant, man.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's this is what we do every year. wonder why we play this game sometimes, because it's like, man, I'm just scrapping for, I'm going to go to the depths of the waiver wire just to field a roster this week. So good stuff. Let's get to you, Mike. This is I think your favorite player here. So let's get to you on number 5 here.
He is definitely one of my guys. The one thing I do want to say about the injury thing real quick, in Pauly's playoff, I am going against a fellow going for 2 guy, and my 2 starting running backs are Phillip Lindsay and Malcolm Brown.
There you go. Perfect example.
Perfect example. And and I'm going against a colleague, so it makes it even worse.
That's rough.
Right. So, Sam Darnold, Carolina Panthers. Yes, everyone knows I love the guy. I'm going to talk a lot about him, but part of it is leading into another player. In the first 3 weeks of the season, Sam Darnold was the 12th quarterback in the league, 68.2% passing, 888 yards, 3 touchdowns, 3 rushing touchdowns, and only 1 interception. There's a key. Only 1 interception. 64.3 fantasy points. He went up against the 3rd, the 6th, and the 19th overall defense against the pass. In weeks 4 and 5, he was the number 11. He went up to number 11. However, all of his stats dropped. He was only 60% completion. He had 5 interceptions and 2 touchdowns in 2 games. People are worried about him right now. Here's my thought behind that. What happened in the middle of week 3? Who went out? CMC. I looked into the stats, and to me, CMC being out is affecting Sam Darnold more than I even thought. With CMC going to be out again, their next opponents are Minnesota, the 9th against quarterback. So CMC is more than, I think he's doubtful this week.
He got ruled out.
He got ruled out?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So tamper your expectations against Minnesota. They might not be the best defense, but they're 9th against the pass, against QBs. Then they go play the Giants, who are 25th, Atlanta, who's 27th. But after that, they play New England, who's 5th, and Arizona, who's 10th against the quarterback. This is going to be a key stretch for him without CMC to prove if he is the new Sam Darnold or if he is the old Sam Darnold. And if he's going to end up as a top 12 quarterback, I thought he was going to be like 12 to 14. He's going to have to prove it in the next 3 weeks.
It definitely cooled off a bit. Those interceptions going up, probably the most concerning part, just because that seemed to be what was going away, and that had haunted him, obviously, in his Jets days. CMC, underrated because it's just such a security blanket. It can be a running back. It could be a tight end sometimes. It could be a slot receiver. It could be really anything for a quarterback where you can just I can just dump it off to this guy, and he's going to get positive yardage for me. And that was part of the reason why I liked it too, despite just getting out of New York and getting away from Adam Gase. Is like now he could just throw short passes to CMC, and that is great. I mean, that's helped Teddy. That helped multiple quarterbacks.
I think so. He's just trying to force it. I think he's trying to force it without CMC there to players like Robbie and DJ Moore, and he's not performing like he was.
Right, and it could be just defense is also catching up with just what they're doing there in Carolina a little bit. So definitely. Yeah, he slides back a little bit and kind of comes back to the norm, I guess, in terms of how you gotta view him week to week. More of the high end or QB2 fringe or QB1. Obviously that rushing that was kind of holding his fantasy value up a little bit. The rushing touchdowns too. So that I don't think we expect that to stay either. So Evan, thoughts on Sam Darnold, especially this weekend versus the Vikings? You think he can exploit that, or is that a little bit tougher than you would think?
No, he's outside of QB1 range for me this week. He's definitely a sit. Obviously CMC is such a cornerstone of this offense. Just kind of the motor to it. And Sam Darnold is missing him for sure. Last week we saw him just get pressured insane amount against the Eagles pass rush. I think he was pressured on a season high 57% of his dropbacks. And then this week, I don't think his situation is going to improve any. He gets the Vikings, who have a top 5 pressure rate. And like Mike said, they ranked 9th. They're 9th best against quarterbacks in fantasy points allowed over the past 4 weeks. So yeah, things aren't looking up for Sam Darnold this week. Or really, I don't think moving forward until we get CMC back in this lineup and he has that security blanket that you speak of. So, yeah, definitely Sam Darnold is a sit for me in week 6.
Yeah, hopefully CMC back soon. Let's get to number 6. This is me. I am up with my next topic. Is one of my favorite guys at football. I'm just going to declare it this week. Javonte Williams breakout game. Let's go. This is a guy, he's been performing, but he's stuck in a timeshare with Melvin Gordon. And I don't think that's necessarily going to go away this week, but I'll give a couple things I like about Javonte Williams and why you can have him in your lineup this week. This is a guy who just forces missed tackles. He did it in college. It's part of the reason why I love him. 3rd in missed tackles forced this year with 19. The only 2 guys ahead of him are Nick Chubb and Derrick Henry, who are pretty good. Almost averages 3 missed tackles forced per attempt because he has less attempts than both of those guys. So he is basically Chubb, Henry level in terms of the missed tackles that he's putting on. He's 17th in juke rate at 33.1%. He has 3.15 yards after contact. He's doing, like I said, same thing he did in college. He takes a hit, has that contact balance. Which we like to talk about. We talk about it on my show all the time. He takes a hit. He just keeps on going. He does not go down. And I think we're through 5 weeks. And I think in terms of snap share and in terms of carries he's getting with Gordon, yeah, it's equal. But I think they have to like what they've seen from Javonte Williams. He's not a liability in pass protection. He's been solid there. He's averaged the last game. He averaged almost double what Gordon had in yards per carry, 7.6 versus 3.8. If you take Gordon's 70-yard run away week 1, I mean, it's really not even close between how they've been performing. It's not like Gordon's washed. It's just I think Javonte Williams is better. They have a good matchup this week, too. Raiders versus the run. They've given up the 13th most points, but they've given up 3 RB1 performances and 1 RB2 performance. The last 2 weeks, they've actually given up the 6th most points to running backs and actually the 3rd most yards allowed. So they've been eaten up a little bit by the run the last couple of weeks. I think this is one where they, even if it's still close to a split, where both running backs can be viable, and I really like Williams because I just think he's better. And I think at some point, I think it could be this week, they start to the transition starts to happen. I think he's shown enough where you got to give this guy more carries because I think he can establish himself more. Wear down a defense and a guy who breaks tackles and has that contact balance can start to help you win games. And Denver needs to do something because they're in it. And they've lost a couple of games here, and they need to start some positive offensive momentum going forward. And I think Javonte Williams is a guy that they can lean on, and I like him this week to be used a little bit more. And I like a little bit of a Javonte Williams breakout game. With me on that, I think he's a guy you can have in your lineup, but what do you think you're going to get from Williams this week? Mike, I'll throw it to you.
I'll just say this. I thought Javonte Williams was going to be the clear number 1 running back by this week. That hasn't happened, but I agree with you. This breakout game is coming soon, and I could see it happening this week. I love Javonte Williams. I loved him coming out of the draft just for the exact same reasons you liked him, Jay. I think me and you were very similar on our thoughts on Javonte, and I think Melvin Gordon is going to end up going off to the side in a couple weeks, but it needs to happen sooner than later.
Evan, what about you? Like Javonte this week? It's coming, I think, but the question is this week, and I think it could happen.
I'm still a strong believer in Javonte Williams, and like you guys, I think it's only a matter of time for he finally takes this backfield over. I mean, they just don't invest, what they have in the young man if they're not just going to at some point let him loose. And on tape, he looks to be the better back. I mean, I think he just does. Maybe they're kind of looking at it like, let's ease him into this thing, but we're already in week 6. So I think we're almost to the point where they're going to slowly start giving him a little more work in the weeks to come. He's getting, he's averaging like 3, even in the passing game, he's getting like 3 receptions a game. So we're slowly seeing it. And why not this week? I've already taken some shots on him in DFS. I like his $5,000 price tag on DraftKings, so I have him in a few lineups. Yeah, so I'm a strong believer in Javante. I'm actually, especially in Dynasty, I'm going to try to, I think now is the time if you can get him, if you can trade for him. I think, his value is the lowest it will be. So I'm trying to get him on teams in Dynasty, and even in redraft, I'm trying to make some moves for him because I think you can get him at, a low cost. And in the next few weeks, I think we're going to see kind of the reins handed over to him.
Love it. 3 for 3. Javante happening this weekend. Yep. Mark it down. All right, let's get to another running back, number 7 here. And it's a running back I think we're going to like as well. Let's kick it to you, Evan, with the 7th topic of the week.
All in on Darrell Henderson. Darrell. I'm all in on Darrell Henderson, baby. The Rams are committed to maintaining his bell cow level workload. We've seen that. Some people are going to look at last week's game log and see those 11 carries from Sony Michel and like, what's this guy talking about? Start getting worried. But those only came when Henderson, he was getting an injury, kind of worked on over on the sideline. And that's when Sony Michel saw those carries. So no concern there. He's going to be a full go this week against the Giants, who rank 5th in fantasy points allowed. They're 3rd in rushing yards allowed to running backs this season. So a great matchup this week. But I don't think Henderson's only in for a big game in week 6. I think he's going to be a top 10 back moving forward, or I think he'll be a top 10 back this week, but he has the chance to be a top 12 back or even better the rest of the season. So over the next 4 weeks, no running back has an easier strength of schedule. He gets the Giants, the Lions, the Texans, and the Titans. But even after that cakewalk, not much really scares me, because after that, he goes up against the 49ers, the Green Bay Packers, and then the Jacksonville Jaguars, all of teams that can, have exploitable run defenses. So barring an injury, I think, Darrell Henderson is going to be running wild the rest of October, all of November, just lock him in as an RB1. And if you can make a trade for him, go ahead and do it now, because I really think he's about to go just absolute bananas. And then, obviously, if you already roster him, just sit back and enjoy the ride.
I love it. I was in on Henderson. I had him down in my notes in case I could use him as a topic this week, just as a kind of a stash of my topics. So I have notes on him. Love Darrell Henderson because I think he's just a stable in the unstable running back situation. I think he's a stable guy. I think he's a buy, particularly in Dynasty where you're looking future term. You're like, well, Akers is coming back there. He's a fantastic buy, I think, in Dynasty, just because people aren't going to value him long term. So if a non-contending team has Henderson, he's an easy target to get on your team, especially with that schedule too. That's a fantastic schedule going forward where I don't see how he's not, a fringe RB1, right? Or, in that 10 to 12 area for rest of season. He gets the workload. He gets the snap share. Perfect point. Sony only kind of played there because he was getting something worked on. These guys had 90% snap share like twice this year, basically, right around 90. Which is wild. I mean, he's just out there all the time. They don't take him off the field. He'll catch passes and get the runs. He's going to get volume. He's a great play because there's not a lot of guys like that. Not the top echelon, but he's a nice next tier down that's going to get volume and should get touchdowns and help your team. Mike, any last thoughts on Henderson? I think he's a great play this week.
Yeah, I think he's a great play. And with the mediocrity and dumpster fire, our favorite word in the show, the dumpster fire of the position of running back.
I had to bring it up.
Stability is the best thing that you can have, and availability is sometimes your best ability. And that's the case in this situation.
Yeah, definitely love that. Let's jump over to number 8. Let's back to you, Mike. Give us your topic here.
All right. So we all know the Baltimore Ravens as a run-heavy offense. Not this year.
Nope.
44.9. They threw the ball only 44.96% last season. So far this season, they're at 54.22%. And in the last 3 games, they have thrown the ball almost 61% of the time, right under 61. They are the 9th heaviest passing offense in the league in the last 3 weeks minus overtime. They are 2% below the NFL average in pass play rate. Last year, they were like 13 or 14% under. And here's the big thing to me. Bateman's coming, and he's coming quick. What's that going to do to the offense? It's going to help the offense. But the one person I wanted to highlight with the changes in this offense is Hollywood Brown. Last year, he had 58 catches on 100 targets. This year, so far, he has 28 catches on 38 targets. He's on pace with the new flow. He's on pace for 89 catches and on pace for 121 targets. I don't think he's going to get to 89 or 121, but I think he's with Bateman coming. But this just proves that they're throwing the ball more. Lamar's not running as he's running, but with the way this team having Dobbins go out and Gus go out and having to rely on Latavius Murray, who is like 31, 32 years old, and Tyson Williams, who wasn't even a name that anyone was really on before the season started. This isn't an anomaly. Is this going to change next year? Maybe, probably with Dobbins coming back. But for this year, this team is no longer a running first offense, and people need to realize that when it comes to fantasy football.
Yeah, we saw it on full display Monday with the crazy games Lamar, Hollywood, and Mark Andrews who had tons of targets in that too. Mark Andrews and Hollywood Brown are having 20% plus target shares consistently. Even Sammy Watkins sat around 19%. I think that can carry over to Bateman. And I think you're going to see, Bateman kind of get eased in and take over a good share. But Hollywood should still be able to feast in terms of the work. He doesn't even need a lot because he's a down the field threat playmaker, a guy I highlighted on my show this week. Just he hasn't scored. He scored under 10 PPR points once since week 12 last year. Since week 12 last year, he's just been rock solid and fantastic, and has scored 11 touchdowns in that span too. A guy who's finding the end zone consistently pretty much every game. Browns making it to the end zone. So I think this past game, especially with the uptick from no running game whatsoever, can sustain a couple of receivers in that team and the tight end in Mark Andrews. And Lamar's been throwing the ball pretty good too overall. So I'm in on that passing game, as you said. Evan, thoughts on Baltimore Ravens and their new passing attack this year?
Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts need to link up in the offseason, and Jalen Hurts needs to ask Lamar,
man?
Dude, how did you figure this thing out, man? How did you do it? Because I just saw you throw for 442 freaking yards and 4 touchdowns against the Colts, man. Just an epic performance by Lamar and that whole Ravens offense. I mean, that was freaking awesome. I actually had the Ravens as the last leg in a parlay that I needed for $2,000. And when they got down, I was like, dude, are you kidding me? I was like, dude, the Ravens is the last leg I need. This is a short thing. Don't you know, man, the Colts come out firing on all cylinders, and I'm like, man, it's over. Next thing you know, I text my buddy who's a Ravens fan. He's like, dude, when you have Lamar, we're never out of it. I was like, all right, whatever you say, man. Next thing you know, Lamar comes roaring back. It was just, dude, it was bananas in my household that night. I was going crazy. I think I woke the whole house up. My fiance wanted to kill me. But yeah, to the cheat, this Ravens passing attack is here to stay. And I actually, if we go back to, episode 1, this is what I talked about in Lamar was the fantasy cheat of, the ultimate cheat code for me this year, because I said if they were going to take a step forward in this passing game, it was just, he was just going to be fantasy gold, which he has been. And then if Mark Andrews is, this was his coming out party once again, he's going to be, taking a lot of teams to the promised land this year on as for fantasy purposes, because, man, 11 receptions for 147 yards and 2 touchdowns. And, Lamar is going to love the fact that he could just rely on him like that. And we saw it before, him and Lamar and Mark Andrews just lock in every week. That was, like we were talking about CMC being a security blanket, that was Lamar's security blanket. And when he was down and out, he was looking to Mark Andrews. So yeah, going forward, man, this passing attack is going to be for real. Absolutely.
Yeah, Mark Andrews was fantastic in that game. And yeah, I didn't win a $2,000 parlay that night, but I did score over 200 points in one of my leagues with Mark Andrews and Lamar.
That's
so
unbeatable.
Close.
Yeah.
Pretty close to your night.
Unbeatable.
Points I didn't need. I only needed like 10, but I got like 80, 90. So it was pretty sweet.
I put up 175 and lost because I played against, not only did I play against Mark Andrews, I played against Justin Herbert and Mike Williams.
Oh yeah, see, yeah.
It's over.
Yeah, that's how it goes. I'm gonna get to my night topic, the night topic of the week. This is mine. This is a guy I think that it can ball out really the rest of the way here. A guy like he's been pretty good so far, a little underrated, but Chase Claypool of the Pittsburgh Steelers, their offense has been interesting so far, just because of Big Ben, looks kind of washed, but signs of life a little bit last week. I mean, he's throwing the ball a little better, but that might be up and down. But Juju Smith-Schuster obviously gets injured, and this is a guy I think they're going to involve more. He has had a target share last week and he's had a pretty consistent target share so far. He had 25% of the target share last week, only on 56% of the snap share. So he was really targeted a lot while he was out there. And I think he's going to be used even better with Juju out. Juju more of a slot guy. That's kind of where he operated. Claypool more outside, but we saw last week a kind of an uptick to his highest amount of slot percentage that he's seen. I think they're going to move him around a little bit because they have some freedom to do that, because they don't really have like a direct replacement for Juju. This is going to be a guy where they're going to probably lean on Johnson, and Claypool is going to get to move around a little bit. And Claypool's a guy you want to get the ball in his hands. He could do a lot of different things. He can win down the field, but you can also give him screens, stuff behind the line of scrimmage, where he can be an effective playmaker there. And that's what you want to see. Get the ball in that guy's hands, especially if you have him in fantasy, because you can get, short yardage catches, and then he can get yards after the catch. He scored solid games the last two games, 18 plus points last two, and Seattle's a nice matchup this week, so I like him as a top 20 play, probably a little bit more around the top 15. Seattle 7th most points given up to wide receivers. They've given them multiple wide receiver 1 performances, 3 wide receiver 1s, 4 wide receiver 2s this year. And so I think him and Johnson are both good this year, both solid top 20 plays. And with Juju out, it's their show. So I really like Claypool going forward. It's a guy, I'm not sure if you can buy him cheap, but it's a guy I'd like to have on my team going forward the rest of this year. Thoughts on that game in particular, Claypool, that passing game? Do you think you think Big Ben can get him the ball enough to make him viable the rest of the year? I'll start with you.
Sorry, I had my mic on mute. I absolutely do. I love Claypool having a few leagues. With the Juju injury, that just, is going to up that target share. We saw him have a 22.5 target share in, all 3 games that he's played since week 1. 130 yards and a touchdown last week. And like I said, with the Juju injury, those, that target share should go up. There's going to be more targets to go around for him and Deonte. So I think, despite Big Ben's kind of, muted passing attack this year, he's got to get it. He's got to get the ball to somebody, and him and Deontay Johnson are going to be the go-to. So I think he's easily a wide receiver 2, with upside the rest of the season. And especially this week going up against Seattle, who, will give up 300 yards in the passing game like it's nobody's business. So, yeah, beautiful matchup this week. And with the volume he should see rest of the season with Juju season-ending injury, I like Claypool a lot moving forward.
Nice. That is good. Mike, before you can give quick Claypool thoughts, before we get to our cheat of the week, which is our number 10 segment, there's one other question in the chat I wanted to get to. So why don't you give me your thoughts on this one? This is a trade question here. Stephon Diggs and Kadarius Toney. Stephon Diggs for Kadarius Toney and Myles Gaskin. So you give Diggs, you give up Toney and Gaskin.
I am a Gaskin stan. We talked about this last week. I know he had a big game, but I am taking Diggs on this one. Yes. Kadarius Toney has put up points the last 2 games. The wide receivers are going to come back. Yes, he's still going to be a play, but when you can get Diggs, Myles Gaskin isn't going to sustain what he's doing. I'm trying to trade Myles Gaskin now. You get Kadarius Toney and Myles Gaskin, get rid of them and get Diggs. I'm taking Diggs on this easily.
Yeah, Diggs for me, very easy. Evan.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely Diggs. No question about it. I mean, while his numbers may be, not Diggs caliber, he's on a freaking high-powered offense. He's the number 1 target of Josh Allen's. He's going to be fine. Better days are ahead. I'm not trusting the Myles Gaskin breakout last week, even though I said he probably should be dropped. Yeah, so if anything, I would just be looking to get rid of Myles Gaskin off of a big week. But please keep Diggs on your roster.
Yeah, I think that's buying low on Diggs. I like that. Let's get into number 10, cheat of the week from each of us. Let's get to you, Evan. What is your cheat of the week, and does it involve gambling this week again?
It absolutely does.
Yes.
I'm gonna keep the tradition alive. I like to give an underdog each week, but honestly, man, this card this week, looking over it, dude, Vegas is spot on with the spreads, dude. So I don't love any of them. But if I was going to pick one, I would take the Raiders on the money line at plus 150 against the Broncos. I'm not going to go in depth because I want to get to my actual cheat of the week that I want to discuss. But basically, that underdog bet would come down to, I think Vegas has the better QB, who is getting points at plus 3.5 points. They're the more motivated team, who I think should band together and play with a lot of fire, kind of looking to overcome just the whole John Gruden fiasco, which I hate, by the way. So yeah, I think the Raiders going to Denver, come away with a win. Raiders on the money line would be my underdog pick, which I took the Bills last week to beat the Chiefs, by the way, which easily cashed for me. I was another betting point. I had the Bills, the Eagles, and the Bengals on an underdog money line parlay. I was so close to cashing a huge freaking day if Evan McPherson hits that damn field goal, man. I was so hurt over that. Anyway, my actual cheat of the week is going to be put some scratch down on Patrick Mahomes to win MVP. Right now, his odds are at 20-1. Obviously, it's a long shot, with the Chiefs being 2-3. They have a just horrific defense. There's no way around it. They are like historically bad. And he's thrown 6 interceptions so far, but I still think he's the most electric, the best player in the league, in my opinion. And, not to mention, he's still leading the league in touchdown passes with 16. He's on pace for 54 touchdowns, more than 5,000 yards. So if he were to end the season with those numbers, those are MVP caliber numbers. If he can somehow drag this horrific defense, which I think he will, if he can somehow drag them out of the mud to like a 12-5 record, get him in the playoffs, he will get some MVP consideration. He gets the Washington football team this week, followed by the Titans and the Giants next. That's a perfect stretch of a schedule to just, put this team on his back, silence all the haters, go off. So, this is the time to buy some Mahomes MVP stock if you still believe in him like I do, because after playing those bad defenses over the next 3 games, I guarantee you're going to see those odds disappear. So, yeah, I'm going to take my chances on the league's best player at 20-1 odds for sure and put some money on him to win MVP.
Don't hate it. Those fluctuate big time too as the year goes on. They, wild all over the place. I did like Josh Allen before. I think he's probably the leader now. I did like him before the season because he had good odds.
Exactly, but you see how
it can go up and down for sure. Let's throw it over to you, Mike. If you have any thoughts there, feel free to give them, but then give us your cheat of the week.
I'm going to refrain. Being a Chiefs fan, I'm trying to stay unbiased. Okay, so let's just get straight. I got something to say during your cheat that is going to degrade my team. However, for my dumpster fire. I got a stat that I found out yesterday that ticks me off even more. So my cheat of the week. I like to find some quirky stats every once in a while, just like Evan likes to find a betting line. I try to find a quirky stat just because it's interesting. So the bottom 12 wide receivers in catchable target percentage is what I'm going to bring up. So I'll dumpster fire. Okay. So the worst percentage so the bottom 12, the first one is DJ Chark. He's number one. He's out, but he's at only 43% catchable targets. So if some of those targets were closer while he was still healthy, he could have put up bigger numbers and actually been something in that offense more than Visca and Jones. But I'm just going to go down the list, 2 down for a few, to just show if these guys had better throws to them, because the names that I bring up are going to be actually shocking to me, at least. Robbie Anderson at 57%, Elijah Moore at 60%. Emmanuel Sanders is only at 65% catchable targets, and he's still having a good year. Noah Fant, 66. Diggs, 66. A.J. Brown, 67. Metcalf, 68. And then Brian Edwards and Ruggs at 70, along with Galladay, and Juju was at 68. Josh Allen's having a great year, but his passing percentage is still like 6th worst in the league. And that's why I think Diggs and Emmanuel Sanders are so low on this. But that just shows that if these guys can, once their quarterbacks, if they can get them more involved and be a little more precise on their throws, these guys who are good receivers and even top 12 receivers like Diggs and Metcalf and A.J. Brown, they're only going to go up. And be patient with these guys. And just like we saw in this, I wanted to bring it up when we saw this trade offer earlier, buy low on Diggs, because he's not going to be what he's going to end up bouncing back, and he's going to have a big year.
Yeah, I think Diggs definitely finishes higher than he is right now, for sure. I'll get to your team a little bit more here. The hot garbage dumpster fire of defenses here. My cheat of the week this week is what I think could be one of the best, matchups in terms of fantasy, just from how bad the defenses have been this year. 2 worst defenses versus QBs in particular this year for fantasy are your Washington football team and Mike's Kansas City Chiefs. Just 2 of the worst teams versus any QB. They have each given up 4 QB1 performances in a row. Week 1, they were okay. They Herbert and Baker were their matchups that week. And although I think each of them played well, they didn't obviously finish as high in fantasy. But then from there, just, QB1, lock it in each week. Those defenses are giving it up. Heineke and Mahomes are obviously the 2 involved in this game. And I think obviously Mahomes is like a clear start. And I think this is a get right game for that entire Chiefs team from an offensive perspective. But I think Tyler Heineke can be a play, although McLaurin being questionable and potentially not playing could be concerning there if you're gonna ride Heineke in either a DFS situation this week or in a super flex league where you're playing him. But you can't argue with playing anybody really versus the Chiefs defense at this point. So I just like the stat that they've basically just, each of these teams are just, QB1, lock it in each week so far. And really surprising more for Washington coming in early on. You're fading players versus them. They have been, last week you saw what Jameis Winston throw up a Hail Mary before the end of the half. That Marquez Callaway was the only one who jumped for. So, just not playing defense whatsoever. So lock in fantasy players in that matchup. So that's just a quick fun stat there where I think you can get some fantasy value in that game. That wraps up our countdown of our 10 cheats of the week. Figure out how to set a lineup this weekend, scrap it together, survive those injuries, survive the bye weeks this week, get ready for the bye-pocalypse next week. And we'll figure it out, try to win some games this week with some waiver wire pickups. It'll be fun. Let's run it around the horn here. Get your Twitter handles back in here. Plug anything you want. Let's run it to you, Evan.
All right, guys. As always, thanks for tuning in. Of course, we'll see you next Friday. But in the meantime, you can find all of my stuff over at Going. You can find me on Twitter at EV_RIT3 at EV_RITT3 over at Twitter. And I'll have a betting article like I do every week coming out, tomorrow afternoon. And then Sunday, we will be on the show at 11 o'clock with Gladys and Eric and Hamid talking DFS, start-sit questions, actives, inactives. So that's a good time. But once again, fun time being here with you guys, and can't wait to do it again next week.
Awesome. And Mike, where can we find you?
Yeah, you can find me at Drop the Mike F on Twitter, and you can find my rankings and my stuff at Going for Two. And the only thing I want to add is about the Chiefs defense. They are the worst per play yards in the history of the league. Second worst was the 2007 Saints or something like that, coached by Steve Spagnuolo. Get rid of him.
Mike, we got plenty of room over here if you want to hop on the bandwagon, baby.
I'm not a bandwagon fan. I'm already marked.
Oh my, wow. And some ink. That's forever, Mike.
That's it.
That's forever.
That's it.
That's
hot
forever.
garbage, baby.
Yeah, you get a dumpster fire on your left.
Hey, Evan, that's not a logo. That's a star rating.
All right. I love it. As always, you can find me.
That's why his Twitter's dropped the mic.
That's right. Yeah, I don't even know what to say now. I don't even want to give my Twitter handle, but I'll give it anyways. It's JAYC_DFF. You can find me there right now, Going for Two. And you can check us out each week, 8:30 Eastern time, like you did tonight on Friday night, heading into the weekend. For Evan, for Mike, enjoy week 6 this week. Like I said, survive this week, get on to week 7, get some wins there, and join us next week on the Fantasy Cheat Sheet. We'll see you then.